Melbourne and Collingwood illuminated all of Melbourne when they squared off for premiership points beneath the mammoth MCG floodlights on the Friday night. Thousands were still clamouring to enter the big arena while the slippery Phil Cracker was setting the Kennedy coach Kangaroos into motion and attempting to match the Magpies' new match-winning spearhead Brian Taylor. Essendon unveiled its pennant at Windy Hill and then was made to withstand as much physical stuff as the Tigers could muster before it was left to Van der Haar and then the gallant Tim Watson to put them in their place. Geelong exploded its new-look style on Hawthorn and had the zany Mark Jackson celebrate each of his 6 straight kicks in pantomime. When Jacko left off, Geelong's match winner Gary Ablett stole centre stage with 6 as well. Take on Collingwood and Jackson to strut his stuff. The singer-song individual finished with 4 goals, but with a jarred knee that would trouble him for many weeks. On this day, there was no stopping the mercurial Peter Dacos as he went goal hunting. The Sydney Swans were again visiting Melbourne, and for another victory. Tiger Michael Roach kept the Swans' defence busy, but they were still able to overcome some bad luck, like a flying poster to Colin Hounsell to briefly go to top of the ladder. Footscray's dusky Les Bamblett was quick to get mobile against North Melbourne, but then had to watch while the Cracker brothers worked their brand of wizardry for the Roos. Alas, their crackerjack play just wasn't quite enough to score a win. St Kilda to open the season and give Victoria a 150th birthday present. The Hawks and Bombers handed it to 42,000 people at VFL Park gift-wrapped. Goals were scored from every angle, and Roger Merritt became the first official victim of the league's crackdown on time wasting. As the final siren sounded, however, Essendon were again the victors. When the remainder of round 3 was played on April 13, North and Carlton staged a thriller. North had come from 16 points down at the 29-minute mark, thanks to 2 miraculous goals from makeshift full forward Ross Glendenning, and now had the chance to win. Winger David Dwyer was in range with only seconds to play. He fired in a torpedo punt at fingertip height and saw it float through for the winner. It again deserted the Magpies against Essendon at Windy Hill when, in a desperate finish, they failed by 5 points. When Tony Shaw shot the ball to Russell Dixon, the Magpies could have taken the lead. Unfortunately, the young rover hooked it. Carlton's David Rhys-Jones has made it a habit of being the football victim. He was in the middle of this wild brawl before the ball had been bounced against Geelong and felt the full measure of disdain from Paul Jeffries. David couldn't do much to help Paul at the tribunal, where he copped 3 weeks. Melbourne's hopes plummeted when Footscray's Neil Cordy applied this tackle on Demon captain Robbie Flower on the greasy surface at VFL Park. Flower was driven awkwardly into the turf and broke his collarbone. He didn't play again for the year. All of Brian Wilson. On the same day, St Kilda broke its drought with inspirational shots from full forward Tony Lockett, who snapped over the shoulder, and then a telling one on the run by Greg McAdam. The upsets continued at the Western Oval on the Saturday when the Bulldogs, barking loudly and fiercely, took the lead on the VFL ladder with a 7-goal win over Essendon. Brian Royal's play that day was all quality. Then Richmond dispatched Hawthorn in the biggest shock. The Deadeye Roach kicked 11-3 to establish a club record against the Hawks. James stamped himself a player of the future with 4 brilliant goals in the first quarter against Collingwood at VFL Park. His effort helped set up a victory for the Tigers. Blondes are supposed to have the most fun, but nobody would have believed it if they were Essendon to see the treatment dished out to David Rhys-Jones. As the Bombers piled on their highest score against the Blues since 1945, Rhys-Jones literally fought a lone hand battle. Another blonde, Essendon's young star, Mark Harvey, had the time of his life, kicking 7 goals straight. Everyone but one man saw Melbourne's Adrian Batterson charge in to kick what should have been an easy goal. Whoops, it was, according to the goal umpire.
The middle will take it.
And Royal elected to make his 50th league game one to remember. And for the Tigers, it was unfortunate. Royal gathered 27 kicks, and from 5 of them scored telling goals. Few men in league football can soar with the skill or consistency of Essendon's Paul van der Haar. And against North Melbourne at VFL Park, he plucked 13 marks from Waverley's airspace. Marks like these. Collingwood's hopes of figuring in the VFL final soured in the space of 2 minutes in the second quarter against co-tenants Fitzroy at Victoria Park. Champion half-forward Peter Dacos was carried off with damaged cruciate ligaments, and then ruckman David Cloke broke his right arm. Essendon and Geelong played at war games at Kardinia Park, and that man again Jackson was in the thick of things. Jacko showed touch in the fistic clinches, and when teammate Stephen Reynoldsson directed the ball to him near goal, he used his left to gain a few points on Paul van der Haar. The Sydney Swans were so waterlogged against North Melbourne at the MCG that they waited almost 2 quarters before Dennis Carroll could score their first goal. It may have looked hazardous, that kick at the point of the ball showing between the arms of Melbourne's Darryl Burke, and it caused some mayhem between the Demons and Saints at VFL Park. But Ron Barassi, the Demons coach himself, excused Saint Greg Burns for his desperate attempt to free the ball.
21-year-old.
Demonstrated to Hawthorn against a determined Fitzroy that he was back to his best. From 17 kicks and 8 marks, Buckenara also won praise from his coach Alan Jeans for his 3 fine goals. North Melbourne's Jim Cracker can at times move like an express train. But there was one time against Richmond when the little fellow felt he'd been hit by one. Fitzroy's outstanding Richard Osman was in full flight against Carlton in an epic encounter at VFL Park, but his 6 goals mattered little at the finish. The Blues still tipped the Lions by a point.
Tradition.
Templeton played the 1980 season at centre half forward for the Bulldogs despite kicking 118 goals from full forward in 1978. Constant injury has since prevented him from reproducing the form which saw him take out football's most coveted award. When Peter Knights is in full flight, Cape Kennedy must be alerted. And against Carlton in round 10, the brilliant Hawk soared magnificently. 12 times he pulled the ball out of the air, and 9 goals gave him a club record against the Blues. Fitzroy's evergreen Bernie Quinlan worked hard for most of his goals and felt the sting from this one against North Melbourne. When things are clicking for Essendon ruckman Roger Merritt, he'll attempt the impossible, like this blind overhead hand pass to a teammate on the run against the desperate St Kilda. And on a Sunday of unpredictable weather, Footscray's goal sneak Les Bablett got 5 goals in this fashion against Collingwood. In this MCG clash against Melbourne, but along with Michael Roach also had Philip Egan picking up goals, by proving you should never give a kick up for lost. Footscray battled against the Saints at the Western Oval and needed every one of Stephen McPherson's 5 goals to assure them a victory. Sydney Swans veteran Barry Round, he's 35, played like a youngster in his comeback game against Essendon and had his true boot on for a while. Then, sadly, it went haywire again. Essendon's captain Terry Danaher showed his former teammate just how to steer a major through. For the first time in his life, the great John Kennedy had to plot the downfall of his old club Hawthorn, and probably would have been well satisfied when the brilliant Phil Cracker sped in to tie a great match for North Melbourne. For Carlton, it was Fraser Murphy showing the Collingwood opposition a clean pair of heels and scoring a brilliant running goal, almost matched by Magpie flyer Ricky Barham. And for a captain's goal when it counted, the Blues couldn't have asked for one better from a crippled Wayne Johnston. Breakneck speed again was exhibited by Fitzroy's mercurial half-forward Mick Conlon as he galloped in for this goal to help bring Geelong down. Commentators called it cracker to cracker, goal. And the Magpies' bad luck continued as Captain Mark Williams can vouch with his boundary-hugging run and sharp-angled shot for goal. Was he out of bounds or not? Perhaps it was a game best forgotten. The Hawthorn-Geelong day of shame, when blood was spilled, bones broken, and 13 reports made. Later, the game culminated in court action. Richmond's coach Paul Sproul declared Essendon was the best side his Tigers had met, after he had run into flashing play from Tony Elshaw. Blues recruit Stephen Silvani dives full length in a desperate bid to stop this Bulldog attack. But it was the old head of Jimmy Sewell who was a better judge of bounce. North Melbourne by 2 points in round 13 at VFL Park, and wouldn't have but for the explosive play of Rover Brian Royal, who kicked telling goals from 22 possessions. It's that man again, Mickey Conlon, barging in, breaking tackles and booting the spectacular goal. Alas for the Lions, it wasn't enough. Hawk ruckman Michael Byrne realised this day he had severe limitations as a forward. For from 9 marks and 11 kicks, he managed to string together an embarrassing sequence of 8 behinds. Geelong's Reg Williams and Collingwood's Mark Williams taught us what it's like to be stopped in your tracks. Cut loose through David Glascott and the gallant Hunter, and a little physical help from their friends. Another Essendon Hawthorn replay, and this time Big Roger Merritt found that by being wide awake, he could catch a Hawk off guard. Bjorn Borg, Ichahara, in what appeared an oversized headband, Dennis Carroll served it up to Fitzroy at Victoria Park, and with 19 kicks and 10 marks, earned best player for the Sydney Swans. If and when you don't succeed, do what Geelong's Andrew Buse did against Footscray. Get back and have another go at it.
Fitzroy.
The super forward Paul Salmon made his much heralded return after a knee injury, only to hurt it again in this tumble. Salmon's knee stole some of the limelight from Ricky Barham's great goals. Gary Ablett had another blonde as a rival when the Cats met Carlton at Cardinia Park. It was to be Mark McClure's day to keep the scorers busy. The great Lee Matthews moved into 4th place on the all-time goal-kicking records when he notched 5 like this against the Sydney Swans to bring his career total to them 901. His former coach, John Kennedy, was setting a record of his own at VFL Park, using his bellowing voice and a new marching step to get the Kangaroos moving. And at the MCG, Richmond was dancing to the tune of Maestro Maurice Rioli, whose hand passing and kicking was impeccable.
St Kilda footy shows it certainly won't be the last.
From luckily Queenslander Jason Dunstall, who got his wish in round 16. Dunstall put the experienced Richmond defence through the ringer with 8 goals to stamp himself as a player of the future. His teammate at Richmond's captain Dale Wakeman found another way to attract the attention of photographers at the game, but theirs was a little more painful. At Victoria Park, struggling St Kilda scored its first win in 11 weeks when it refused to be detoured by the persistence of Tim Pekin. The brilliance of Richard Osborne went on the run. The Saints looked to rugged Greg Burns to get them moving, and he obliged. Rover Tony Elshaw had perhaps his greatest day when the two top-of-the-ladder teams, Essendon and Footscray, met at Windy Hill. The former Demon kicked 6 goals. Bulldog captain Jim Edmund will be able to tell his kids about the day he collided with the Incredible Hulk, Rene King, and lives to tell about it. One Bomber trainer will have his yarn to spin as well. But for the match-winning stuff, Essendon relied on Timmy Watson. Geelong people flocked to see Gary Ablett turn it on and were given a treat at the MCG when the unstoppable Ablett took on North Melbourne. From his 15 kicks and 7 marks, he shot 8 straight goals. For Essendon, on the ground or in the air, Harms was a hard man to keep hold of. Jeff Rains tore into attack from the Collingwood centre line to make things difficult for his former club Richmond. But like all other Magpies, he was given many an anxious moment by Tiger forward Michael Roach, who was again on target with 8 goals. It was like a picket fence being knocked over when the two number 11s of St Kilda and Geelong, Greg Burns and Greg Williams, tangled at Cardinia Park. North Melbourne's young star Matthew Larkin was prepared to run through a lump of wood, the point post, to save this score, while Melbourne's John Fidge preferred to climb to the second story to get his scoring chance.
At the moment, Jack, and the surprising part...
Essendon's Tim Watson had a record on his mind as he charged in for scores against North Melbourne. He was, or he did. The Bombers booted a record-winning margin of 104 points over North Melbourne thanks to his 5 goals. Footscray's Simon Beasley produced a record for round 18 with his 12 goals against Richmond. Beasley's tally beat the 10 of Michael Roach and the legendary John Coleman. Hawthorn and St Kilda tried to set a Guinness record. How many league footballs you can stack on the mill? It's that electrifying cat again, Gary Ablett, taking one screamer after another against Melbourne and putting them to good use 9 times. Fitzroy took revenge on Collingwood, its landlord, for putting it in the visitors' room for their home match, and let Bernie Harris in the jinx number of 13 do all the damage. New aggression in this cat sandwich, where he ended up bloodied, but with the free. Then the mighty Bombers went on the rampage with play like this. From Watson to Baker to Westham to Harvey and a goal. Hawks like Gary Buckenara helped put Collingwood out of contention for the finals with aerial displays like this. And then, if that wasn't enough, the Hawks rubbed the Magpies' noses in the mud. Carlton blitzed Richmond at the MCG with precision goals like this one from Wayne Johnston, until Jimmy Jess tried to liven up his side's ruck work in raw fashion. One hell of a busy redhead made round 20 a day to remember for Fitzroy. The Bulldogs defender Brad Hardy seemed to monopolise the ball in the side's narrow win over Hawthorn, except for one instance, when Mayland got the ball to Hawkins for the first and only goal against the Wind. The Blues' Molly Meldrum was a big hit against Fitzroy with his stylish play, but Ken Hunter toppled from the chart when his hand pass was intercepted by the watchful Bernie Quinlan. David Cloke wore a protective foam guard on his arm in his comeback game against St Kilda, and at the end of this run, it served its value.
Collingwood versus...
It was the first time Hawthorn champion Lee Matthews had been asked to sit on the interchange bench. Lethal had a good view of Carlton's young fullback Stephen Silvani taking a spread eagle mark, and then a skyscraper. Of David Rhys-Jones showing his class, and then his temper. Then Lee came on and showed them how. Little Budgie this time beats his skipper Jim Edmund as the Bulldogs succeed in sewing up the second chance in the finals. Big Magpie David Cloke finds that arm guard of his a comforter again. Richmond, through play like this from Morris Rioli, hand passing to Wall and then to James, put the Cats out of contention. But soon knew what he faced from Hawthorn. Ross Glendinning assisted too by disposing of Russell Morris. But then, a loose-limbed left-footer from Gippsland named Robert Handley answered for the Hawks. Collingwood Shane Morwood gets the ball to Brian Taylor, who goes. Then cops it from an upset Blue, David Rhys-Jones. Jones made one of his regular appearances to the tribunal as a victim after this encounter. The Tigers believe they've uncovered another star forward in Stephen James, who got this goal and 5 others against Melbourne in a last-round game that finished in a brawl, the biggest for the season. Only victory avoided Fitzroy's champion and Brownlow medalist Bernie Quinlan on this day when he chalked up his 350th league game in brilliant fashion, netting 4 goals against Geelong.
The two players that we expected to poll well each finished up with 15 votes, but neither taking out the coveted trophy. The trio, Matthew Larkin 15, Steve Wallace 15, Gary Ablett also 15 votes. 15 also Timmy Watson from Essendon, Brian Royal from Footscray and Greg Williams from Geelong.